Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to Story Time. Today, I'm going to be sharing a story that happened in real life to me in the very recent past, and I drew some lessons that gave me some ability to reflect on what I'm still working on, but also lessons that are so applicable to us in the practice of medicine. And so I want to share a story with you. So last week, 1 week ago today, I went to go and get an IUD placed. I had been planning on that for a while. I had scheduled an appointment. I was ready. I've had one before, and here we go. Now, I had specifically scheduled an appointment at the OBGYN clinic and not with my primary care doctor because my previous IUD was a little bit difficult to get in. And so I had scheduled with the OBGYN clinic. They had given me an appointment, a date and time, said the provider's name, but did not mention the provider's credentials. So I was surprised when I showed up, and it was a nurse practitioner who was planning to insert my IUD. Now, nurse practitioners, PAs, people are highly trained in various settings and sometimes not in order to be able to do procedures. But when I look back at this, it's not specifically that the provider was a nurse practitioner, it's that I had specifically wanted to get an experienced OBGYN physician because of my past. So that is an important point in the story here. This isn't really going to be a belabored discussion about scope of practice, but that is the background. So I was able to get my procedure. I would say that there was fairly normal discomfort, although there was more pain on the left side with insertion, which comes to play here. And I left the office feeling fairly comfortable. I had what I considered pretty normal feeling cramping overnight, a little bit more in the morning. And when I went to check the IUD strings, I could not feel them, which was worrisome to me because that's not supposed to happen. I was able to reach out to a friend who happened to be in clinic, and a clinic with an ultrasound. And so I ran over there. She confirmed no strings. We looked on the ultrasound. We couldn't really see it. But, TMI here, I have a retroverted uterus, a non-pregnant retroverted uterus, which makes it more difficult to see. So we weren't sure, but that's the best we could do. So after that curbside exam, I did send a message that I wanted a formal ultrasound to be done with the better machines, right, by an ultrasound technician, and was able to get that scheduled. However, over the subsequent days, I found myself having not cramping, but just a lot of weird bowel sensations that were not normal. There was nothing severe. There was no fevers. There was no vomiting, diarrhea, nothing crazy, but just weird sensations that were not normal. I was feeling some anxiety, of course, because, the brain can overthink, but I just kept telling myself, well, I'm not really sick. I will get this evaluated. But it kept persisting for several days, and I was low in energy and just not feeling myself. So I reached out and was able to get a quicker x-ray. Now, let me point out here, I did get an order for an ultrasound, but I listen to me, I had pushed out the ultrasound to the following week because I did not want to reschedule patients. Now, that is flaw number one. And, at the time when I had scheduled that ultrasound, it was relatively early in this process, and thus I wasn't really thinking that there was a huge problem, but I should have reassessed that. But anyway, I was able to get an x-ray, which is a very, very imperfect test, but it was a quick, easily available test. And we could see that the IUD was at the very least sideways, which is not the direction that it's supposed to be. Later that evening, I just started feeling worse. And my husband saw me moving in a way that he wasn't used to, heard me, kind of grunting a little bit as I was feeling sharp pains. And he said, "It's time. We need to go. We need to go and get seen." And we did. And one ultrasound and one CAT scan later, okay, the IUD had exited the building and was hanging out, thankfully on, but not in my colon. The surgical team was excellent. I was not able to have surgery that evening because I was not acutely ill, but I was able to get in the following day, which was yesterday. I was able to have a successful laparoscopic retrieval of the IUD that was no longer intrauterine, and they were able to place a new one under laparoscopic guidance, which I'm so grateful for all of those parts. And surgery went well, and they were able to see the injury on the left side of the uterus, which correlates with my pain experience, even though it was not severe. So today, I am about 21 hours post-op from a laparoscopy. Thankfully, I am doing well. I am moving easily. I am eating all the things that I should be doing. My body is doing. Thank goodness. And I am relatively resting compared to what I had planned for these last couple of days. But I'm going to tell you, and we're going to walk through, that was a real struggle. And it just goes to show that when we are recovering people pleasers, recovering perfectionists, we will continue to struggle with these times when we need more help, when we need to take a break and take care of ourselves, sometimes urgently. And I really want to use this as a prime example of that, because unfortunately, and if you're a woman physician, you know this to be true, we experience more difficulties, more random weird stuff than the average person. So an IUD perforation happens at about 1 in 1,000. I had cholestasis with both pregnancies, which is about 1 in 10,000. And the only other person I know who had cholestasis is also a physician. We could talk a very long time about the number of physicians who face infertility and a number of other difficult medical circumstances, in part, I am sure, related to the high stress work that we do in delaying childbirth, child rearing, if you are choosing to do that until later because your career. There are many factors at play here, which I'm not going to belabor any more than that, but I just want to acknowledge that real things happen to our bodies as much as we are taught to ignore them. So, lesson number 1 here is that if you aren't comfortable with a decision, we need to listen and honor that. Again, this is not about whether mid-levels should or shouldn't be doing certain procedures. There is plenty of debate about that already. But in my case, I had specifically wanted to go to the most experienced level, care provider available, which would have been an OBGYN physician to place my IUD. Now, I did not confirm when I walked into the OBGYN clinic that all of the providers there were OBGYN MDs. I did not confirm the credentials of the person that they had scheduled me with. And I did not say no when I was in the room and learned that this person was a nurse practitioner. And it's not about, who should or shouldn't be doing these things. It's that I had specifically wanted something and I did not honor my gut. I did not honor my own decision to have gone to the most experienced type of provider, theoretically, right? I trust that an OBGYN surgeon is naturally more experienced and capable of dealing with the consequences of an IUD insertion gone bad. Although, again, I can't say that anything was done negligently. I just know that I experienced this, and looking back, I can walk through what happened at, kind of a step-by-step level. But that is beside the point. We are not comfortable pushing back against people and speaking out for what we want. There were opportunities for me to have confirmed the credentials of the person who would be inserting before I scheduled the appointment to make sure that I was scheduled with a physician. And you can bet your butt that I will be doing that from here on. I shouldn't need any more IUDs because I'm of that age. But I know for me, I am going to politely and clearly ask for what I think is right. That is really the lesson here. I also had an opportunity in the moment. I could have rescheduled the appointment. Ironically, an OBGYN did come in to give me a paracervical block, which I had requested as well. And I could have insisted in that moment that he stay an additional 2 minutes and put the IUD in. I didn't. I could have. I thought about it. And at the moment I hesitated because I thought, no, that's, he was kind enough to step in and do this for me anyway. She's here. She's the one who is I'm on her schedule. She's the one who's supposed to be doing it. I look back at myself with kindness on that decision, but I have a new frame of reference. And in the future, I will make sure that if I have made a decision, that I do what it takes to follow through with and complete the decision because it was what I felt was right. So again, this is not about the scope issue. This is really about me having decided that I deserve to have a certain thing and then waffling because I did not want to be pushy. I did not want to be, quote unquote, that person. I am allowed to be that person. I am allowed to speak up for myself, and so are you. So when there is a decision, when there is something that you have decided that somebody is pushing back on or saying, oh, no, it'll be fine, I want you to consider trusting your gut and allowing yourself to follow through with that decision and ask for and insist upon what you need. Now, I doubt very much that any of us will go from wherever we are to being an absolute jerk, right? To demanding unreasonable things. I don't think that is going to happen and show me an example if you think otherwise. But I do think that we need to advocate for ourselves, advocate for what we think is right. And I don't think that we should feel bad for it. Lesson number 2, when your gut speaks, listen. Now, looking back with curiosity, I didn't really have much cramping, much uterine cramping, sort of typical feelings after, the day after the insertion, after I had discovered that the strings were missing. I did have discomfort. I did have not severe at all pain, but just kind of random sensations that were not normal. The gut is so heavily innervated. We know that, and we need to know it more. As an obesity medicine physician, as a family medicine physician, right, this is something I am intimately aware of, and something that we deal with a lot, right? Our gut is very sensitive to abnormal situations, right? It is sensitive when our eating is really random. When on one day we go and we eat fast food all day and the next day it's all vegetables and salad, our gut doesn't like that, right? The microbes inside do not respond well to that much change from one day to the next. So if we have consequences, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, gas, it's because we have confused the gut microbiome. It doesn't know what to do with that. Now, similarly, if there is a foreign object in your abdomen pinging around, your gut's going to tell you that things don't feel normal. And again, in this circumstance, it was relatively mild, but my gut was talking to me, literally talking to me and saying, this is not normal. Something is going on with us. And it took me a while to take it seriously enough to take more immediate action. I did take action, but I waited and I didn't want to inconvenience others. And that was wrong. Not wrong. I don't know. That was not the best. And I can't say that the outcomes would have been any different because obviously I was going to need surgery anyway. I was not in any life-threatening danger. I was not sick. And most likely I would not have gotten sick. I don't know if the bowel symptoms would have improved, but it would have always been a question on my mind, certainly if I hadn't done anything. What happened? So I'm glad that I was really tuned into doing normal things to check it out and then upping the intensity of those interventions to make sure that I got what I needed. But let's broaden this, right? And really thinking about our gut. So what else does our gut respond to? Our gut responds to stress, anxiety, depression. Our gut and our brain talk to each other through the vagus nerve. And there is more and more research that shows how the impact of the vagus nerve talking back and forth, the gut microbiome balance, all sorts of these components about how our brain and our gut speak to each other. And when we suffer from irritable bowel type symptoms, when we suffer from reflux and constipation and diarrhea and migraines, which sometimes have that abdominal component, right? You might have nausea. Kids in particular might have abdominal migraines where they feel it as a tummy ache. This is a flag to the body that things are not going well when we experience these chronic symptoms. And how often have we tuned those things out because we're too busy or we don't imagine how we might reduce our stress or anxiety or depression? It's a sign when we are suffering from recurrent symptoms in these areas or, acute symptoms in this case, we need to pause and we need to see our gut symptoms as a warning sign or as a light, engine on, engine, check your engine light, whatever that thing is called. I don't know. I'm post-op, guys. Forgive me for the brain not working quite as well, because you know what? Things happened to my gut yesterday. So my point is that if we tune into our bodies are speaking to us. Let's listen. We were taught to ignore our bodies. We were taught to ignore our hunger, our need for sleep, right? The need to hydrate and go pee and all of those normal things. We were taught to push that aside for the sake of taking care of patients. And there are times and places, you are not going to stop in the middle of a code to pee or take a nap. Not going to do that. But we are so chronically not listening to our bodies when our bodies are speaking to us. It is time that we let that go. And yes, that may mean lots of different changes in your life. That may be asking for help, reducing your hours, getting more support, hiring more help, all of these things. It may include any or all of these, but I need you to listen to what your body and your gut in particular are telling you and responding, because they are very smart. They are the wisest parts of us. If your gut is unhappy, let's explore why. What is going on? What can you do to optimize? All right. Point number 3 is we need to be willing to get help sooner. I went through the steps to getting help, but again, in my desire not to inconvenience patients and have to reschedule them, I was going to delay care. And that most likely would not have resulted in any different harm than having the pain, because the IUD was not likely to do anything. Yes, it's possible, right? But it's not very likely that it's magically going to decide to erode into something. That happens a very small amount of the time. But I also had the opportunity to get this evaluated more quickly. And in weighing the balance, I didn't based on what I knew. But as things were evolving and as I was having persistent and then worse symptoms, I was still hesitating to move forward with a more urgent evaluation. And I'm so grateful to my husband who just looked me in the eye and said, "We're going. Call your mom. She can stay with the kids." Right? And took me straight to the emergency room. I have done that for him when he had an acute abdomen, and it was a hard thing to convince him because, spoiler alert, he also struggles with people pleasing, and didn't want to inconvenience. But I want us to be willing to get help sooner. And this applies so broadly in so many areas. So, this is a very particular example, right, of an event that happened to me. And I did not sort of, I did not update, um, kind of the urgency based on how I was feeling. But this happens in so many places in our life where we feel like we need to wait until we are septic, until we do have, a more serious version of things going on before we get help. And that certainly comes up in mental health and burnout when it relates to physicians, right? It certainly comes up when we're struggling with other health problems like migraines from staring at computers under fluorescent lights, and having high stress levels and not enough time to move our bodies and drink water. There are lots and lots of places where that shows up. And it is absolutely true that we are socialized to be the helpers and to not need help. We need to not continue to do this. We need to advocate for ourselves. We need to get the help that we need. So often, in particular, I see women physicians who are left on their own. You are more likely to, not have the medical assistant when they are short staffed. Now, I don't have hard statistics on that, but in my lived experience, it is and continues to be based on what I hear from other people. It is much more rare for a male physician to not have the support staff on times when the clinic is short staffed. Now, again, I don't have any hard data on that, but tell me I'm wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong on that. This is what I saw is that male colleagues more consistently had dedicated medical assistants and nursing staff that were used to working with them more directly. And women physicians were often with less stable partnerships. I think that was true before the pandemic, but it has certainly worsened as the pandemic has led to the Great Resignation, and as we've had less and less support staff in our offices and less consistent performance. I am not here to be throwing shade at our nursing and medical assistant colleagues. What we do is difficult, and it's difficult for them as well. But I think that many of us have experienced in different pockets that there is not as much help as there used to be. And the performance of that help is not really what it used to be. And I think there are many factors that need to be solved there. But the lived reality is that we are often under supported for the work that we are doing. We are often expected to continue to do the same level of work or sometimes even pushed to do more because that is what brings in the revenue, right? What brings in the revenue is that you, as a physician, see patients, send a bill to the insurance company pays. That is the dominant model. And if we are seeing less people because we have less staffing support, the healthcare system, quote unquote, suffers, right? Because there is less money coming into the system. And if we are looking at this from a purely economics perspective, you can see why having less staff and asking the physicians to do, more with less is financially, appealing. And when we don't insist upon having the same help, and we don't insist on, having different performance expectations when we don't have help, There is no push on the medical system to fix the problem. We need to start proactively being willing to put pressure on the medical system in order to better support the care that we provide and the needs of our patients. When we have high functioning teams with all of the players, the medical assistants, the nurses, right, the people answering the phones, the staff at the front desk, the back office support, when we have great support in all those places, when we have additional healthcare roles in the office, nutritionists, social work support, pharmacy support. When we have those pieces, we are able to do quite a bit more. We are able to be real leaders in that space and be able to provide much more comprehensive care to the patients that they enjoy. But most of us have experienced that has all been cut down. And we need to be willing and able to ask for help, to be clear with what we can and can't do when we don't get help, and put some pressure back on these systems that are pressuring us more and more to do more with less. There is a tipping point, and we cannot break our backs being that tipping point. I don't know if that analogy works, but I'm just running with it again because it's been a rough week, guys. We really suffer from this notion of comparative suffering. We know how poorly some people are doing, right? We know how poorly our patients are doing in terms of health outcomes or socioeconomic stressors that they face. We know the very real stresses within the system, and we are very apt to point and say, well, I'm not as badly off as that person over there. And until I'm as badly off as they are, I shouldn't whine. We have been socialized to do that. We have been socialized to ignore our own needs and wants, right? We have trained in and worked in systems that have told us no, 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 no over and over again when we've asked for, less patients per clinic day, less patients when we're rounded in the hospitals, more support, more help. We are used to being told no. And we internalize that as we are expected to suffer more. We have to start undoing that mindset because it is harming us. It is harming us sometimes physically. It is harming us emotionally by increasing stress and burnout. Burnout in healthcare is such a complex issue, and it touches on so many different areas. But I really don't think that we are going to see system-wide solutions anytime soon, as much as they need to happen. Do not misunderstand me there. But until we are putting pressure back on the healthcare system by insisting on having more help and support, by continuing to take leave when we are not able to work for various reasons, to really show them that if they cannot provide the support that we need, we cannot do more. We cannot continue to provide high quality, excellent, well-rated, care when we are also doing all the extra work of the support staff. Things do not flow smoothly. Visits take longer. All of these factors come into play, and they are a very real part of the healthcare landscape. Those things are probably not going to change, especially in the next several years. And thus, it is up to us to decide that we are worthy of help, even though we are frequently told no, and to set healthy boundaries about what we are and are not willing to do. We need to take care of ourselves more than ever. And this story that I've shared, which I share from the perspective of someone who realizes, oh, yeah, I still need to work on these things because we are always a work in progress, even when we have come a long way, which I have absolutely come a long way. There are still pockets for me to work on. There are still pockets for you to work on, and the work is worthwhile. I'll tell you, yesterday I was waiting to hear about whether or not I was going to be able to go to the OR. I went home from the hospital and got into bed around 2:30 a.m. And I knew that being out was going to be particularly difficult for the clinic where I was supposed to be doing procedures because they're a time-sensitive issue, and I wasn't sure if someone was going to be able to step in. And so I wrestled with the decision, would I go in and do a few procedures while waiting to find out if I was going to be going to the operating room today or tomorrow? And I'm so glad that I did not. I did not. Could I have done it? Yeah, I could have. I was feeling pretty miserable because by that point I had, let's see, I would have been NPO for about 15 hours when I would have been going in. And have I worked like that? Have I gone to work after a night with very little sleep, not having fed and watered myself very properly? Yeah. Did I remember what that felt like, having worked on labor and delivery and delivering babies for 10 years? Yeah, it was very familiar. And, I was feeling not great, a little headachy. Could I have pushed through and safely done those procedures? Probably, probably because they were not something that require a ton of, thinking or skills that are, unclear to me. But, but I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad that I allowed, the teams to come together and figure out a way, even though it was difficult for them, and I'm so grateful for them. I'm glad that patients were able to be seen and people made it work because I was not in good shape. And I was able to have surgery later in the day, thank goodness. And now I'm a little sore, voice is a little scratchy, all the normal stuff. But I'm so grateful that everything that needed to happen happened as it did, including me not going to work and not trying to push through it anymore. I know that is a very real thing that occurs to many women physicians and male physicians. I just don't know. You don't have the same reproductive parts that grow little humans and have lots of different ways that they can go wrong. That's particular to my story here. I don't know how often you're working through migraines and other physical ailments that have been contributed to by stress, anxiety, and or reproductive organs being difficult. My poor uterus wasn't being difficult. It just wasn't treated nicely enough to keep that IUD. But in reference there, women who experience menstrual cycles, right, go through a lot of hormonal ups and downs all throughout the month. And then you hit perimenopause, and it can go to a much greater degree of chaos, as it does for many. Women physicians, if you're perimenopausal and you're experiencing these symptoms, I want to encourage you to talk with an expert about hormone therapy. That's all I'm going to say about that today. Just want us to not suffer. Let's let go of this idea that I have to be suffering a certain level to get help. Let's let go of this idea that someone else is doing worse than I am and therefore I don't deserve help. These ideas, these beliefs that we have are harming us. And I hope that I've been able to show that to you today. My friends, trust your gut. Trust what you need. I know that we sometimes work in settings where no matter what we do, we can't get the help and support that we need. And sometimes we are going to need to leave those particular positions and we are going to need to go to a different place or do something else. And we need to do that with better boundaries and with the belief that we are worthy of help and support, not only in our professional lives, but also in our home lives. I hope that as you listen to me yammer on week after week about these issues, that you are making changes. You are making changes, I hope, that help you to get a little bit more space in your life, to be able to get the support that you need, to be able to do the things that you want to do and spend time with people that you love, to be able to get the things that your body needs, healthy food, enough water, exercise, enough sleep. These things are challenging and no one will hand them to you. But until we start treating ourselves well, we won't feel better. My friends, thank you so much as always for listening. Until next week, take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.